Hello. Is this working? Am I on the side?
You're sideways. You're sideways.
Am I? How you like me now, bitch?
Is it a phone you're on? There you go. There you go.
I'm just gonna.
Everything okay? All good.
Let's do something really cool. This is more the vibe. That's the. If you know the nerdy reference, it's Howl's Moving Castle. It's a Studio Ghibli film. It's great. You got to see it.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll just. Should we let's just go for it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Need to Know Music Show with me, Ronan McManus, here on Switchbox TV. I'm joined today by a truly innovative and inventive artist known as Beardyman, who began beatboxing but has taken the art form to an entirely new level using technology and bespoke technology. The more I see of him, the more amazed I am and the less I can believe my ears. So it all comes from your mouth. Beardyman, how are you?
I am absolutely loving 2020. It is the greatest year I've ever experienced, and I'm full of positivity and hope for the future.
That is great to hear. So you've been enjoying the sort of lockdown period. What has it, what has it brought you?
It's brought me joy and lots of time to work on music and improve my mental health and state of physical fitness. I am finding that the world is full of promise and opportunity, especially for people in music who are making more money than they ever have before. I am happy. The government is doing a good job. These are the good times. Everything's great.
And so the
everything is fine. Everything is cool. I don't know, man. It's a fucking shit show, isn't it? It's a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't get me started. I don't know. I'm right though. Fine. It's fine. It's fine. No joking.
So
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've recently had to sort of really get into grips with my physical fitness because I just went to shit and my mental health took a massive nosedive. I'm on the way up again now, I have to say. But I mean, how have you found the sort of the lockdown thing? Was that just really sort of tough on you mentally and physically? How has that been?
I mean, I got 3 kids, so being like under house arrest with 3 kids, all of them under the age of 5, was a challenge. But everyone has got their own challenges in this thing. I mean, it's weird for musicians because, I say weird. It's terrible for musicians because like the live events sector was the first to close. It'll be the last to reopen, and we were kind of watching it happen in slow motion because like people that make their money from touring, and that's not just musicians, it's the crew as well, and the industry supporting it, agents, managers, event organizers, everything, that whole industry, which is billions in the UK alone, they were just watching their industry break down, stutter to a halt. And it was especially stressful because in March, when this was all happening, we could see this wave coming because we were suddenly having to decide whose liability it was legally if a gig was pulled, because this is force majeure and most contracts don't necessarily have a clause for a pandemic, and if they do, then things are just kind of voided, but people have still put money in. So insurers now are in a bind where they're like, well, we're not going to insure anything in the live events industry. So the live events industry still can't really go ahead. I was booked to play a bunch of drive-in shows, and that was being put on by Live Nation, I think it was. But they pulled all of them because the insurers pulled out, because the government said that a local authority can, at any time, pull a show in the interest of public health. Live Nation were also in trouble because a memo leaked saying that they were going to charge performers double what their fee was going to be if they decided to pull a show, which means that if they pull it because of conscience, so that they don't want to be responsible for putting on a show when there's, you know, a rise in cases, but not like a huge rise in deaths. And it's on that performer, financially speaking. So this is a terrible time to be a live performer and to be a musician in general. I mean, it's not a good time to be in any particular industry, unless of course you're a hedge fund manager, in which case you're fine. You know, there are some jobs that just haven't been affected by this. Like, okay, you work from home for a bit, give a shit. But for people whose livelihoods rely on mass gatherings, like the live events industry, it's catastrophic.
I could see by your releases of 2020 alone, you did like between February and what was it now? Between February and May, you've done like 12 singles. You did like one a week for the whole of February through to March. So what was the thing behind that? What was all that about?
Well, I mean, so at the beginning of this year, I embarked on this project called Sheer Volume, which was supposed to see me releasing a track a week, doing a podcast and live streams every week. And for the most part, I kept up with that. And then lockdown just did me in because, you know, having 3 kids, you only have a certain amount of time anyway. But then the schools closed. And then I really wasn't able to do anything particularly productive. So rather than like do it, but have the quality, you know, dramatically decrease when all of this stuff is ending up on the streaming platforms forever, I'm like, okay, I'm pausing this project because until the schools have started again, I want to be a good daddy that's not super stressed and releasing shit work. I'd much rather pause this project, be present for my kids, and try and rescue my ailing mental health under house arrest in a monkey enclosure, essentially, with 3 kids. So like, yeah, but that project will be continuing in a couple of weeks, I think, because I've got several podcast episodes ready, and it's a podcast which is unlike any which are out there at the moment, because it's kind of a podcast in name only. Like each podcast is kind of a mixtape album type thing made entirely of original music and sketches and kind of banter weirdness that I've kind of recorded and then messed with live in real time and then messed with later and tweaked and stuff. So it's kind of, it goes in and out of different things, and each week it's a different guest or set of guests, and each one has a very different vibe. But it's not just like 2 people talking in a room. It's like a kind of collaborative sort of bantery vibe where banter will turn, I hate that word banter, but what you'll see and say, but like turning into basically people having fun and being silly, that turns into music, and things get sampled into the music, and the music comes in and out, and you can never tell what's quite been done live and done later. And so it's a real trip. And like there's also, you know, sketches and stuff with different impressionists and comedians doing sketches and stuff like that. But that's been a lot of work to try and get done. And I also paused the live streams because I just didn't want to. Lockdown is nuts. Like, it's completely nuts. For someone who hasn't got kids, lockdown is lonely and unfortunate. And someone with kids, you know, as you know, lockdown is mental.
Absolutely.
It's mental because the kids are climbing the walls, and each child is a project. Like, you know, each child is a full-time job. It's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So that was the financial stresses.
But to understand, sorry, go on.
I started a Patreon, and go give me your money on Patreon.
I did exactly the same thing. I've started mine too. I just kind of did a 1 level thing. I did £5. Everyone's all in, and I didn't really know how to tackle it. Really, I thought just to kind of, but it's you feel like it's a good direct way of just sort of communicating and earning. You know, people can basically subscribe. For those that don't know, Patreon, it's a way for creators to get subscribers, and therefore they can have different tier levels and different amounts of money, and then you get different rewards for different amounts of money being put in. So, I mean, how have you found doing that? How long has that been set up, and how have you found setting up?
Patreon is amazing, and there are a bunch of services that do a similar thing now. I think there's like one or two other competitors, but as far as I can tell, Patreon is by far the best of them, by far. It's run by a guy called Jack Conti, who was himself a prolific creator of videos and music, which got millions of views, and deservedly so. He's brilliant. And he burnt himself out about 7 years ago because he was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not getting financially remunerated for the work I'm putting in. YouTube ads don't pay. I've got a gig to earn money, and you know, gigging isn't the be all and end all of being a creative person on the internet. If only there was a way of, you know, having people kind of subscribe to your output. You make stuff, people pay for the privilege of seeing how you make it and getting more kind of personal things like Q&As and how-tos, and seeing the rough drafts and the offcuts that didn't make the edit, and or they get to contribute to the work itself. All these kind of things that make it feel like a sort of a family, you know. And you can gradate it into tiers, where you have like a lower tier where you don't get so many of the perks, and the higher tiers where you do, maybe meetups after gigs and things like that, preferential tickets for concerts and that kind of stuff. And it's great because like it gives you this sense of affirmation where you're like, oh, people really do care about what I'm doing enough to pay me to do it directly.
And it gives you sort of something, gives you a real purpose to create as well. Because it's direct. I've got people waiting, and they're paying me to do this stuff. So it's definitely positive for me anyway. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, is yours enough to live on? Yeah. Mine's like nearly.
No, not quite. No, I'm not. Mine's been very slow building. But I haven't had this exposure. But I mean, exposure you've had is, I'm a singer-songwriter basically. I mean, I front a band, but so I had two things going on: my solo thing and my band thing. So I've made my solo thing now all, so that's just me, purely Patreon, and I've got a record deal with the band thing. So that's kind of more of a rock thing. Brand New Zeros we're called. Yeah, brand New Zeros. So we've got new stuff coming out at the moment. So we kind of that's sort of been halted by the COVID thing. But so I've now decided to put all my acoustic stuff through Patreon, which has been kind of interesting, and given that a purpose, because that was kind of lost in the sort of, you know, as a side project. But I think people to understand more what you were saying about your podcast is understanding more of what you do is kind of would help you to understand what you were talking about, because it's very unique sort of stuff that you do. The looping, it's all produced from your mouth and your vocal cords. So you started off as a beatboxer, and would you still call yourself that now? I mean, it only seems like to be a part of what you do now.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd classify myself these days. I guess a kind of electronic musician, performer, entity, man thing. But beatbox plays like a large part in how I make the sounds I make. So basically, all the source sounds are from my mouth and my voice and clapping and whatever. And I've built a system which is like, it looks like something out of Star Trek. It's like all these like controllers and stuff. And
this is the Beardytron, the Beardytron 5000.
Yeah, and it controls this kind of big Ableton rig that enables me, for those who don't know, it's like music production software, and it sucks my voice in and turns it into whatever I want, which is a nice way of working because it's very intuitive, and I can just sort of come up with an idea before I realize I've come up with it, if you know what I mean. I can sort of, you know, sort of route around my sort of conscious sort of editing that would normally go on when I'm, you know, making something, by doing it in real time and like just going with my instincts. And I'm not the only person to do things in that way. You know, like John Lennon had this thing where he was like, if you come back to a song the next day, you'll ruin it or whatever. That wasn't exactly what he said, but he was like, finish it that night, you know?
Yeah.
It's that whole kind of thing. It's like, if you're writing a piece of music, there's no real reason why that thing should exist. Like, it's just an expression of the state you're in at that particular moment, you know. And if you want to express how you're feeling, you will have rethought it in an hour. Like, you'll have you know, it's very difficult to like capture a soul, you know, but that's the skill of songwriting. And, you know, I've written some cool songs. It's just that I like to not give myself the opportunity to ruin them. So I like to get them done as quickly as possible. And if I can get them done in real time, more's the better, you know?
Well, that was what I was thinking. It must be so much more, trying to think of the right way to put this. Like, you get to explore more of your own creativity, your own brain, probably reaching parts that other people don't get to reach just because they don't have the immediacy of it being outside of them, if you know what I mean. You probably tap into parts of your creativity you didn't know were there because it's so immediate. So, I mean, how do you not have this hooked up 24/7? I mean, it must be.
I do. It's over there. I've got it. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, man.
Let me turn the background off. It's over there. Virtual backgrounds.
So,
none.
Like,
Here we are.
do you find yourself kind of going back to it, like in the middle of a day at an unexpected time and just doing something because it's come to you? Or
so
wow.
This is my little spaceship, and I won't demonstrate it now because it's not plugged in. I probably could have, actually, if I'd have really thought about it. But either way, I sing and beatbox into that, and it goes into that computer, and I mangle it, controlling it with all these knobs and buttons and sliders and keyboards and whatnot. So I can sort of, just sort of do a set that sounds like a sort of DJ set, or I can sort of make a song and it will follow song structure, or I can sort of just extemporize and get weird. And it's just sort of fun, you know.
I think the TED Talk video thing is a good introduction to kind of entry level of what you do. I mean, would you say that's a fair example of what you do? Or
that video makes me cringe because they cut out.
Oh, right.
They cut out the audience laughter track. Like, they sent it back to me with like my output and also another track which is my output plus the audience. And I was like, oh, it's flamming. Like, there's 2 copies of my output. I was like, can you sort that out? So what they did was they just dialed down the audience until I made a really big joke. So it sounds like all my jokes were bombing, and then occasionally I'd land a really big one, which is really fucking weird. And then they put it up without telling me. So everyone's like, the audience seems a bit dead. I'm like, I know they do because it's fucking anyway. But otherwise, yes, that's a really good video to
I wasn't listening to the audience at all. I was so engrossed in what you were doing, I didn't even notice that. If that's any consolation. But it was, but the sort of the way that you can manipulate. So you basically create the noise, and you can turn it into whatever you want it to be. So it doesn't even sound like a voice anymore. I mean, that's I just find that whole thing absolutely fascinating. It really just, as a songwriter, I'm like, man, this is a completely different way of looking at it. It's
funny.
My mind completely.
Well, to me, I've always looked at sound design as something that, like, all synths work in the same way. Like, you have, a source wave of some sort, which is generated in some or other way, and then they can be modulated, and they can have frequencies filtered out, and you've got different kinds of filters, different shapes of filters. Modulation can take loads of different forms, but it's all using the same kind of principles. And the voice is so malleable and intuitive and adaptable anyway. If you use a voice as a starting wave, it doesn't take that much manipulation to make it sound like anything else. And it is doable in real time.
I've been the guy in the studio going, have you got a keyboard that goes sort of sound? Whereas you could just go, that's the sound I want, and do the sound. You kind of know that must cut down a lot of time in this. Do you know what I mean? Because you can spend hours trawling. Yeah, I mean, trawling through sounds to try and find the one that's fitting what you're hearing in your head. Whereas you can actually physically create that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're paging through loads of presets, that can be really cool, because then you'll come across something that has this vibe and this flavor and this tone that will trigger off, a completely random inspiration and take a tune in a different down a different path that you didn't see. So that's lacking in what I've got here to a degree, because it's quite prescriptive. But at the same time, it's almost like I can generate a new preset, which has never been heard before, by sampling something completely random from my voice, just make a different vowel sound or choose a sample of a different length or something. And so it's much crazier in terms of the sounds that I end up with, and much more unpredictable. So yeah,
it's much more you though.
It's very similar.
Much more you. So you're not relying on inspiration
but it's
from,
also,
from an outside source.
Exactly, but it's also just like you end up with lots more kind of unpredictability, where yeah. So for example, I might want to do a bass line, and I've been like ball like that. But let's say maybe I sort of pressed the button wrong, or I just missed that first transient, or I only got the first transient, and so the loop is cycling around this tiny little thing, and instead of making like a bass line, I've made some horrible noise, so I can just pitch that up and turn it into like a razor bass, or I can like, you know, so from a mistake, because you're in the moment live, you don't get to go, oh, I fucked that up, let's try it again. You just have to work with it. And you're like, okay, well, that sample needs to be pitched up and high passed, and now it's a hi-hat, you know, so you just kind of
but you do entire gigs like
that.
this, don't you? You do these live sort of DJ performances, or you know, what people would hear as a DJ performance, but it's all live, it's all you.
Yeah, and like, but I've got programmed into the system, I've got loads of I guess like safety valves, like sort of presets in terms of song structure. So where dance music will have its kind of standard structural tropes, I have those programmed into it, but all they are is settings of mute states of tracks and you know, filter sweeps and stuff like that, but there's no sound in there. So like, I have to have beatboxed the beats in, sung the bass lines in, put the melodies in, chosen the sort of textures of each, and you know, then I can jump to these kind of song structure points. But the music that is being filtered and manipulated has to have been put in real time. So, you know, I can play for hours and you'll never know that I was working with like a bank of about 30 song structure presets, because like a lot of songs obey the exact same structure, but the music in them is completely different. So it kind of works for this too.
So
how nerdy can I get? How nerdy can I get?
No.
Like, are the people watching this music nerds? Because I've been going deep electronic music nerd.
I think this. Well, I mean, this is fascinating for me.
This?
So I don't.
Who the
I
fuck
don't.
is watching?
I don't. I am. That's all I care about. I just please myself, and then I just please myself and Sean, and that's it. You know, the guy who works for Switchbox. But so what sort of influence? What sort of influences? So when you're creating this stuff, what sort of music are you emulating in your mind? Do you have like people you grew up listening to, or like influences on you in that respect, or is it literally just something that you just comes from inside you?
Depends, man. I don't know. Depends what I've just been listening to, or what I'm obsessed with at that point, or you know, what I'm. Sometimes I have like a brief. You know, if I'm doing some commercial work or something, I'll just fulfill a brief. You know, or if I'm just making some music on my own, my mood will dictate it. Or sometimes I'll have like a song that I've written with like something I've written as a poem or whatever, and I'll try and make that. Or sometimes I'll just go with the flow and see what happens, and I don't know what's going to come, or who knows. You know, there's no rules. I mean, I don't know, in terms of my influences, I don't know. I grew up listening to my parents' record collection, which was like Elton John and Kate Bush and the Beatles and Lionel Richie, but then there's also like some classical music in there, and weirdly no jazz. My dad doesn't like jazz. My mum isn't into it, so there was no jazz. So I grew up thinking that jazz was kind of this kind of useless excrescence that lay outside of music, which was fun and colourful, but of little real value. And now I realise that jazz picked up where classical music finished. I thought that classical music finished in the 20th century, turned a bit avant-garde, went weird, lost its way, and became sonic experimentation, music concrete, and all that kind of stuff, which was then sort of reborn as, you know, electronic sampling music and stuff like that. But that's not true. Like, it branched into, like, you know, white people experimenting with noise, and then like basically the black community who all went to music school being like, no, let's fucking carry on. More chords, more scales, more music theory, incredible battles of musical skill, and a sort of expanded lexicon of musical theory. That's jazz. Jazz is like, I mean, that's crazy. Like, you know, if you learn music theory, you know, classical music theory seems pretty basic compared to jazz theory. So yeah, my musical upbringing when I was a kid, I don't feel was adequate. Because,
but you're doing that improv thing now, aren't you? Though you're in your, like, in the way that jazz musicians.
Yeah, but I'm not jazz
improv.
trained. I would have loved to have been, because it's just this amazing world of.
I feel like it would have suited you.
And flavors.
It would have suited you the way your mind works, I suppose. Then, if you.
Yeah, well, actually, a piano teacher of mine was like, she's like, you shouldn't be learning classical. You should be learning jazz. And at the time, I was like, nah, because I thought jazz was like that thing with people going and like the same few chords, and I just didn't realize. I just didn't know. Like, I don't know. I wish someone could have sat me down and really explained to me, just played me the greats, and like explained to me what this thing was, and how there's this sort of underlying systematicity to, you know, chords and scales, and, you know, the interrelation between all these different modes. It's incredible. So yeah, I feel like my musical upbringing was like adequate to get me to the point where I thought that the 70s is where pop music reached its like glossy heights, and that everything since then was kind of, because also I was a kid when rave music was happening. So, and all I heard was like the shit that made the charts in the UK. So I thought that dance music, when I was a kid, I thought dance music was shit, because I was like, you know, I was hearing like Right Said Fred and Ebenezer Good, which I didn't understand the double entendre. I just didn't, or I was, you know, or pump up the jam. I was like, this is crap. I didn't know until I was older and getting bootleg CDs and tapes and stuff of like proper actual rave music. It was like, oh, this is fucking amazing. And I just
what sort of age were you then?
That was when my real musical education started, I think, when I was like, oh, okay. Right. No one ever played me James Brown when I was a kid. No one, like, in respect to my parents, like, they like what they like, and that's great. But like, yeah, there's this huge lineage of outsider music and, you know, jazz and experimental sounds and electronic music, which I just didn't know about, which that I would consider now more important to me than as important, let's say, as my music.
What sort of age were you then when you started getting in, finding your own feet in music?
Well, in terms of like music taste,
and music taste, and in terms of being inspired to create music yourself.
Well, I've always made music. This is when I was 5. The only people that could hear it were my parents, my brother and sister. But like, yeah, I've just always done it. Like, I mean, and just now people listen to it, but I've just it's always just been a part of what I do as a thing, as a person. I'm just like, we had a piano, I'd always play it and make up songs. I've been writing songs since I was 5, and yeah. But in terms of like opening up to electronic music, and it was I was like an indie kid, you know, until I was on some summer camp somewhere, and I heard, when I was 15, and I heard Circles by Adam F. And that tune, man, like, it might seem quite nothingy now. Like, it's kind of, you know, it's like, is that a chill out track? Is it like a, you know, what is it? When I was 15, I'd never heard anything like it, ever. Because it contained in it influences from every part of music that I just hadn't been exposed to. So it was kind of drum and bass, when drum and bass was just starting to find its feet as a genre and being defined as such. And it was this very confident mixture of fast BPMs, but kind of new age, chill out kind of synth textures, kind of sine wave bass lines, which was kind of taken from jungle and hardcore, and you had these kind of aggressive drum rolls, which were from jungle, which had just sort of come and gone, and then you had
can you spin yourself around again?
Jazz, and that's why it was.
You're sideways. Sorry, man. I was really sorry. Yeah. So sorry about that.
I'll just carry on from where I left off, because I was really getting to something very, very fucking important that people need to hear. Yeah,
it's a Need to Know music show, so they need to know. Go.
Yeah, no, so listening to Adam F. Circles when I'd never heard any of the influences that comprised it before blew my mind, because it was all those things that I'd been missing from my musical upbringing, which was the sort of modal variations of jazz and the those sort of colors and weird inharmonicities that you get when you're doing sampling and things don't quite match up, mixed with like there's a part where there's like an MC chatting doing a thing which was like borrowed from hip hop, I guess, going like tick 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 tick, which just sounds cool, and I'd never been exposed to that in that way before. And then there was like, that's like one small element. Then you've got these like sine wave basses, which is like the electronic music I'd heard in pop, but way more chilled out. And also I was hearing it over a proper system where that you get to feel what the bass is doing. So that's sound system culture, which I'd never been exposed to. And also like these beautiful jazzy kind of Rhodes keyboards and stuff, which was like elements taken from like, 70s production, but not the kind that I'd been hearing. And then, these like crazy sort of, machine gun snare kind of things, which I didn't know where that came from, but that was from jungle. And the kind of the vibe of it, which came from kind of chill out rooms, but also kind of just like weed smoking, like underground culture, there was a kind of acid jazz thing going on at the time. So you got this like rebirth of sort of jazz and funk, and that was playing into it as well. And then I got the Adam F album because I was so blown away by this track and the vibe and the feel and the colors and the mood emanated by it. The lack of any real lyrics as well, but the vibe of it, how like drum and bass kind of takes you on this train and you're just on this meditative journey, because everything you hear in the charts is meant to annoy you enough for 3 minutes that it distracts you from whatever you were doing. But like drum and bass comes from a place where it's to put you into a meditative state so you can just be, and whatever thoughts are in your head can just be there, which is a different mental space to be in that society at that point, and you could argue still, doesn't actively push for. Like, if you look at like how much money is going to be made in the economy if everyone's in like a sort of alpha state where they're really blissed out and chilled out and they're sort of just smoking some weed and going, oh, maybe shit's cool. Like it came from like, it was kind of weed smoking kind of, alpha state dreamlike kind of new age kind of vibes, but it was also kind of the ecstasy fueled kind of blissed out kind of vibe. And you can't separate the drug culture of the time from where dance music and electronic music came from. And I'm never going to be the kind of person to say that there's no value to be found in these transcendental experiences. So like, yeah, man, all of that was contained in Adam F Circles, and I didn't know where these things were coming from, but all I knew is I just needed to know how to get more of this feeling. And it wasn't drugs. I was 15, I was in a field, but my mind
that's a life-changing epiphany. All that stuff you just mentioned was all happening in that moment.
Yeah. That's crazy. And I only found out about what these influences were bit by bit as I went on. I was like, oh, so that's borrowed from jungle, that's borrowed from jazz, that's borrowed from funk, that's borrowed from hip hop. That's the result of this scene. That was to kind of satisfy that culture, that kind of vibe, knowing where it came from. And I mean, wow. But I mean, that time, 1997, was an interesting time for music generally, because you had like Britpop in its death throes, and I think a lot of kids of my age were like, what are we really doing here? Are we going to be listening to Pulp and Blur and Oasis and Radiohead forever? So one by one, those acts either kind of produced dog shit albums or reinvented themselves or like, you know, devolved into like electronic experimentation or whatever, because there was so much interesting stuff happening in electronic music. And also the means of distribution were changing. Like it was around 97, 98, 99 that file sharing became a thing. And suddenly the mainstream couldn't control people's music tastes anymore. And after a while, you know, come to like the year 2000, 2001, they couldn't control music sales anymore. And then you got MySpace happening and things like that. And music discovery became a completely different beast. And like,
and home studio technology as well. People were starting to be able to make good sounding industry standard recordings from their own bedrooms, which has now moved on to from their own phone or whatever, you know. But you know,
well, the demo is dead. There's no such thing anymore.
Yeah, this is it. So but that's, I mean, that's a hell of a time to live through. In the discovery, I mean, timing was absolutely impeccable for you, really.
Yeah, I loved it. Like it's a lovely time to, because also like for my generation, what am I, 37? Am I 38? Fuck knows, who cares? I genuinely can't remember. I think I'm 38. Cool. No, but it's like, yeah, like for people of my generation, we've watched it go from being like, computers are this thing you can play a game on with like a couple of pixels moving around, to computers have replaced all the other things. Like it used to be you needed like a recording studio. You don't anymore. You just need a computer. You used to need fucking, you name it. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's been an exciting time to live through. I try and explain it to my kids sometimes. We go to the Science Museum and I'm like, you see this whole corridor, all these things are now like the phone does them all. You know, there's like big TVs and big music, you know, storage formats and all and they're all gone. And now there's just a tiny little slab. So yeah, it's a crazy thing to have watched, but that's why Patreon is so important. Not to like hammer the message home, but like there was a time for about 100 years when music, you know, from having been a performance only medium turned into a primarily recorded medium based industry. Well, it wasn't really an industry before. And because there was this recorded media boom, which was an entirely new technology, music changed to fit the length of time you could fit on a format, and then the industry around it and people's expectations around music completely changed to fit that. And so the trajectory of a band, the idea of a band, is formed entirely around that old model. Now that's gone, and also the means of creating music have been completely democratized. Patreon is necessary, especially in these times of COVID where you can't perform anywhere. You have no choice but to start a Patreon if you are a performer. And it's not a bad thing. It's good for you as an artist because you get affirmation, feedback, as reliable a source of income as you could hope for. Obviously, you have to keep making good shit because if you don't, why should anyone fucking give you money? But that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, it's good. It's good for art. It's good for artists. It's good for what more do you need?
It's good for the audience to get that sort of direct relationship and be able to sort of, I mean, with my one, I kind of asked them their opinions on things, and it's sort of that interactive community thing as well I was trying to create. But loads of people do it in different ways, you know. So, but I think I agree with you. It's a really positive thing for creators to actually be able to make some money, which has basically that with no record deal, no real record, no major deals going on, and no real way of making money from physical sales.
Well, things have changed so much that like any given 2-year window in the last 20 years has been its own paradigm. You know, so if you look at 2000 to 2002, you're looking at the decline of the established music industry as was because of the prevalence of illegal downloading. 2002 to 2004, you're looking at the birth of Web 2.0, where music discovery and distribution is changing beyond all recognition, and MySpace is becoming established as the way that you contact and connect with artists and exchange music recommendations. Then you get the rise of music blogger sites, and you get the establishment of iTunes, and before long, it skipped to another sort of 10 years, and the music industry is kind of on its arse, and they've all been bought up by hedge funds, and they still exist, but they're basically a kind of funding funnel for marketing campaigns, and then you've got 360 deals for artists where basically you just get this huge loan and it gets paid back by them taking a chunk out of your live revenue that you're completely owned. That's if you're like one of the big players. But then, you know, for the smaller independent labels, they're still just kind of making do. But then cut to today, and even like music blogs are not the primary means of music discovery now, thanks to Jimmy Iovine and the like, who's the, you know, head of iTunes, you know, he heads up Apple's music stuff. And, you know, he's the one that created Beats with Dre and all that. It's now monolithic again. So you've got Spotify and Apple Music, Deezer and all that, Tidal and whatnot. But their search and discovery stuff, there's very little search, lots of discovery, lots of algorithmic recommendation, which is a blight on humanity anywhere you see it. Like, it can be very useful, but look at what it's done to politics. It's, you know, polarizes people and feeds you more and more extreme stuff because it knows that you'll spend time on the platform if that's what it feeds you. It can be a positive thing for music, and very often it is, but there's sort of these curated playlists which are pretty corrosive, I think, to the idea of music discovery. But that said, sometimes they'll suggest something to you that is absolutely perfect for your vibe, your music taste. So it can work. But
it's just a bit dangerous taking humanity out of any kind of art. So I think it's also kind of it's an uncomfortable feel. It's an uncomfortable feeling, isn't it?
I mean, you could argue that if you're an artist doing anything today, you can moan and bitch about, you know, Instagram if you're a graphic artist, or Spotify if you're a music artist, or whatever. It's like a politician complaining about the press. It's like these interaction platforms are all there is for you to get your creativity out into the world. And you can look at the playlists as a gift, because whereas it used to be that you had to fight your way to a tiny playlist of like 20 songs to get on the radio, to get the exposure, to get the record deal, to get the touring, to get the money to sell the merch. Now, you know, you can be smiled on by a playlist person, and they've stuck you on a playlist and hasn't cost you anything to do. You know, and now you're being heard by millions of people, and it's, you know, and then you've got SoundCloud and all these kind of things. Like, there's, I'm not like, hello,
sorry, yeah,
that's right. Yeah, no, I'm not like moaning about the state of music in 2020. I think it's, in terms of music discovery, weird and monolithic and non-remunerative to the artists as it is. So long as there is Patreon and things like it, I'm sure there'll be more competitors as it goes into the future, but for now, Patreon is fucking awesome and I love it. I feel like fine.
It's if you've got Patreon, then that sort of takes all the negatives away from the Spotify. You're not looking for the financial side. It's more that the trouble with playlists and with algorithmic search and discovery is that it can, depending on how the algorithms are designed, favor things which only have a plurality of appeal, where the thin end of the wedge, which is what used to be beautiful about the internet, is kind of demoted to being the kind of thing that you really have to actively search out. Whereas, you know, like, I feel like Reddit is an amazing platform because you can hang out in weird subreddits and you're not ushered away from them because it doesn't favor the platform. Something like Facebook, which is a demonic cesspool of
of hellish, like, you know, attention sucking evil, that you get this monolithic experience where all you can do is flick past something. That's your only choice. A chimp could do that, you know, or like Instagram, which favors very, very quick experiences. And you could say, well, there's so much content being made. Everyone's got a video camera at all times. Maybe this state that content is now in, where everything has text, so you don't need to listen to it. Everything is done in short form, attention grabbing form, because you don't want to have to watch a long thing. Maybe that's fine. I don't know. It's like, yeah, I think you can design the platforms better, or at least the design, these platforms that we use get designed to maximize profit for the platforms. They don't design the platforms to serve a community. But that's the difference with something like Reddit. That's the difference with something like Patreon or Discord. So like, Discord is a great way to communicate with people because it's built for gamers. So it's built to kind of communicate with people quickly and easily and build communities. It's you know, Patreon is a great way to build a community where once you are a member, you really are a member. Like, you're not going to get algorithmatized away. Like, if, you know, YouTube has, it's very capricious. If you're getting lots of views, the way that YouTube's algorithm is structured is such that if you make a video that's got millions of views, but the next video you make doesn't, and let's say you made a video that really hit the nail on the head with a particular topic, grabbed people's attention from the start, was particularly controversial, got millions of views, the next one doesn't, the algorithm will go, okay, well, he's just experienced rapid decline, so let's not boost his next one either. And because that's happened, you'll get, and it's just, there's a kind of accumulator effect of fail that YouTube will kind of factor in to how you're scored. And I've seen loads of creators worried about this effect. So you just have to kind of keep consistent over time. But with something like Patreon, you don't need to worry quite so much about that. So if you're a creator online, you're like, oh shit, I rely on my ad revenue and the views are all I care about. With something like Patreon, you're not chasing views. You're not chasing topics that you think will get you views. You know, you don't need to cater to the lowest common denominator or the most attention grabbing thing or the most clickbaity thing. You just don't.
And so you're not compromising your artistic side of things. You can kind of keep that where you want it to be.
Exactly. It's, yeah. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect. But luckily, like I say, Patreon is run by Jack Conti, who, he's a good dude and he is a creator and he still makes stuff. He's in like 3 bands or whatever, and like genuinely cares about making this thing the thing he's had in his head and helping YouTube creators and graphic artists and musicians and whoever else to be able to make the stuff that they make and have a community that pays them to do it. It's say that and doing like commercial voiceover work is what's supporting me at the moment. Like, I do voices for cartoons and I do voices for adverts and stuff like that, which I can do for my studio. And then doing the stuff for Patreon and growing that community and doing that stuff. When touring starts again, when this COVID thing is over, then that'll be cool, and I'll tour again. But in the meantime, because fuck knows how long it's going to be. It could be a year, it could be 2 years.
It's true.
Who knows?
It's true.
Like, I mean, there are 130 vaccines or something being trialed. So chances are, in the next couple of months, one of them will enter like the next phase of testing, and we'll get, you know, one of them's going to work. But then you've got the problem of like, conspiracy theories are so rife now. People, maybe a majority of people will say, well, I'm not getting it. It's only 1% of people die of it, and Bill Gates is trying to infect me with, he's trying to make me infertile or something. People genuinely think that. And, you know, I'm not saying Bill Gates is perfect, but you want to live like this? Like, I mean, that's pretty controversial. There's probably going to be some fucking anti-vaxxers out there who think I'm fucking satanic now, because they'll be like, Bill Gates is trying to put a chip under your skin and trying to control you. Really? Are you sure you're not just mental? You sure? Get the fucking vaccine, you dickhead. Like, look, by the time it's entered the final phase of testing, they'll have like a high, they'll know what the side effects can be, as with any vaccine. I mean, look, I'm fucking, whatever. Shall I go on a rant now about anti-vaxxers? Anyway.
No, we're gonna do, we're gonna have to
it's just so weird. Like, you'll ask me a question about like my musical influences, and it'll be a very smooth decline into me ranting about anti-vaxxers with no real gaps.
Listen, it's kind of happening to all of us at the moment. Because you can't help it, because it's in there. It's just worry in the back of your mind. But
it's like, well, I will tour my album as soon as Bill Gates invents a vaccine. What? Like, fucking insane.
It's the reality of it. But what was I going to say to you? Oh yeah. How good?
Do you know what I fucking got? This is so mental. You know, Wiley is now like a racist, which is weird. You know, Wiley's been tweeting like all this anti-Semitic stuff, which is nuts. So like, I was raised Jewish, so it annoyed me that Wiley was putting out all this propaganda, like anti-Semitic propaganda, because it seemed dangerous to me. He's followed by millions of people. If he starts tweeting this propaganda, it puts Jewish people at risk who are going to agree that everything he's saying is true, because they won't have done enough research to know that it's all bollocks, right? So I put some little video out saying, please stop being racist, this is bollocks. Then someone's contacted me who knows him, being like, he wants to debate you. I'm like, all right, only if I can get the chief rabbi on as well, and I could just host a debate between you and the chief rabbi. And this person was like, okay, it's on. I'm like, this must be 2020. It just must be 2020. If I'm hosting a debate between Wiley and the chief rabbi, it must be. That's the most 2020 thing of 2020 yet.
This is the Niche Music Show. We'll be trying to give people music that they need to know. And so we're going to, without any algorithms being involved, we're going to ask a human being, Beardyman, what's your recommendation?
Well, I've recently taken to listening to some early Trentemøller, because that's always good. Like, the stuff that he was doing between 2006 and 2007 was some of the best produced music in the world. I've been listening to that. What else have I been listening to? I sometimes go on like deep dives backwards, as well as listening to new stuff that's come out. If you want some amazing stuff, listen to Mr. Bill. I think Mr. Bill is probably the best producer today. Well, in his vein of like, kind of, you know, I suppose, like, I don't know what you call it, IDM maybe, but it's like, I rate him as probably the best producer living today. He's so good. It's like tight and glitchy and just crazy, but also just like, yeah. I've also been listening to a band called Suicide from New York in the 70s, where they were the first people to use the word punk on a poster. And it's kind of like one man kind of ranting incoherently and kind of being kind of strangely loose and overtly sexual, and a guy on like a sort of very basic synthesizer, but it's engrossing and incredible. Also listen to Jockstrap. Jockstrap are unbelievable, and they're just amazing. They make music that's so angular and weird. They're new. It's like a boy and a girl. I think they've just come out of music college or something. But it's fuck you music. It's like they kind of take your expectations of what you might be expecting and just shit on it. And then it's great. Really kind of jarring, but really satisfying. Like, at times really musically interesting, and at times just brutal. Lots of white space and sort of dead air, and then just brutality and like just deliberately choppy kind of, it's a real onslaught, but also really beautiful. Run the Jewels' latest album is a masterpiece. What else is good? Loads of shit's good. Oh, Igor with 3 R's is probably the nuttiest fucking music you'll ever hear. It's kind of like grandiose, orchestral, like electronic metal, like math metal. I can't listen to more than one track at a time. Like, you have to sort of listen to one track, and then once you're through it, you have to sit down, have a nice cup of tea, and then kind of shake it off and get on with your day, because it's really intense. What else is good? So much stuff is good. What else we got?
This is my summer sorted now.
Yeah, man. Just see what I've been listening to recently, because I sometimes go on these like deep dives of a particular thing. Like when there was like a time in 2014 when I was like, why haven't I ever listened to everything David Bowie's ever done? And I just listened to everything David Bowie had ever done exclusively, and then watched every interview he'd ever done and read every article that had ever been written about him, and just became utterly obsessed for a year, and then didn't listen to him for another year. And I just like, I've been listening to Blur again for the first time in like 20 years. And I've become fascinated with the band, because I think they got so famous that they were more of a kind of pop entity than a music making entity. And actually, if you listen to Graham Coxon's guitar parts, like his use of chromaticism and sort of trills, and the choice of notes and the arrangement, there's no one that plays like that. It's just amazing. And the pop music they made when they were making pop music was nuts. And then to make this kind of like American kind of sludgy, grungy stuff, you know, it's, yeah, I don't know. Like when I was a kid and listening to Blur, I was like, this is fun. But now as a grown up, having a bit more sort of musical, you know, training and knowledge, and, you know, being able to sort of look back and ignore the hype and stuff, I'm like, holy fuck, it's really interesting to. And also, like, I suppose stuff I was listening to when I was growing up, I was listening to Massive Attack for the first time in a few years the other day, being like, the balls to make music like that, you know, because music these days, it kind of feels like, because there's so much made of it, and, you know, we're living in this era of like, we're kind of in the post-trap era, I think, maybe, you know, where there's a very like established set of sounds and genre tropes that get recycled and recycled and recycled. It's interesting to have grown up in the end times of music, because I feel like now, I think it's all been done. Like, I think music is complete in terms of how extreme you can take a genre, or how mental a genre can get, or how spaced out music can be, how tightly produced, how lockstep, how wonky. All of these extremes have now been explored. Like, you know, that we're living in like post Dilla, where like you can make extremely wonky music that barely fucking fits the meter, or, you know, you can have extremely tight, well-produced music where it sounds electronic and it's meant to. We've had like industrial shit that's, you know, as distorted as you can make it. We've had gabba that is as intense and as fast as human beings can stand. We've had breakcore, which is as unexpected and twisted as it's possible to make music. You know, we've had like Brian Eno showing that you can make music that doesn't have any edges and doesn't have any beats, doesn't start or stop. Where do you go from there? Like, you can't. Like, there's been resurgences in dream pop, in reggae, in jazz, in soul. Where the fuck do you go from here? Like, it's a fascinating.
Just go back to the start again. Just go back to square one.
Just hitting a log.
That's the next Beardyman log
back
album.
logs.
We look forward to it. Look
Log
forward to the
step.
next log step.
Yeah.
Well,
just people hitting mammoth bones together.
On that bombshell. Live from Beardyman's cave.
Leave me here with my screaming. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, listen, we're gonna have to I can
Lovely to meet
literally,
you, man.
I can
So everyone watching,
literally
join my
just-
Patreon. My kids are really hungry.
Yes, dude.
They want
Honestly,
more snacks. They're always asking me for snacks. Help me out. I'll make music.
Listen, man.
It'll be great.
Listen, good luck. Good luck with everything you're doing, because it's fascinating what you're doing, and it's properly blowing my mind. So just keep doing what you're doing, because it is amazing. And I urge everybody to join his Patreon, everybody to join, to go check out what you're doing, check out all your singles that you've done in 2020 and everything you've done before. Because we didn't even touch on your album in 2011. We didn't even touch on so many beatbox champion stuff. So much stuff we didn't get a chance to talk about, but we did solve the world's problems. So
we did.
Yeah,
it's solved.
So
2020 is solved. 2021 is going to be fine.
you heard it.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Listen, thanks so much for joining us. Absolute pleasure.
Nice one, man. Good to meet you. Take care.